Okay. I've got it shared. Let me stop my share for a second. And let me find me. There's got to be me somewhere here. There I am. Okay. Hello, it's Rhonda Thomas, and we're getting ready to do Managerial Accounting Chapter 4's intro exercises. So we will share my screen, and you'll see, I think, okay, got the share. All right, so here's what I've got. I've got the ebook open to Chapter 4. I've got the problems open, just the intro problems. Okay, so let me get that open for us. And then I've got a spreadsheet open so that I have a place to do calculations and not on the board. Okay, so hopefully this is working out for you. If not, I'll take suggestions. Okay, that's not a problem. Oh, I picked the wrong one. This is the coursework. Sorry, that's the coursework. Let's go to the intro problems. Oh, got the wrong one. Just a second. Review quiz. There it is. Okay, intro problems, preview as a student. Start now. Okay, I thought there was just 5. Okay, so we might not be too bad doing this. So, all right. So once again, this is called activity-based costing. So we've been through job order costing. We've been through process costing. Now, let's think about applying overhead based on who deserves to carry more costs than someone else, because maybe they do something more in the business than another position or whatever. Okay, so we're going to try to see if we can't understand this a little bit. So here we are in Chapter 4, product costing allocation methods, right? So once again, to allocate means to spread out costs over certain products and things, okay? So in this chapter, we're going to see a single plant-wide rate method, a multiple production department rate method, and an activity-based method, okay? So we're going to learn these 3 and how they work. Let's remember what the 3 things are that are considered our product cost, right? Our product costs are direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Notice all these lists still fall under each allocation method, but the allocation that we're worried about is this manufacturing overhead. That's why that arrow is right there next to that manufacturing. Manufacturing overhead, or any overhead of a business. You can have more overhead than just a manufacturer. If you have a store, you're going to have a certain amount of overhead because of the different costs that you have to pay and are part of your business, but you're not sure how you're going to spread those out across the products. Okay, so just keep in mind, it's overhead that causes all the problems. How do we figure the costs there? Okay, so we're going to do each of these. All right, and so we'll work it out. So the first one is called the single plant-wide overhead rate method. Okay, so I'm going to list this here. Single plant-wide overhead rate method. Okay, let's see what they have to say about it. See if there's anything that we could write down about it. It says manufacturing overhead costs are allocated to products using only one rate. Let's just fill that in. That's an explanation of this method. And this is our method number 1, right? Method number 1, one more time. MOH are allocated to products using only one rate. Okay. Now that's nice and simple. Okay. But you're going to see by using these different methods that some methods are more fair than others. So who it's fair to are the departments that make those products. So no matter how you slice it, if you are in charge of a product line or a certain area of a business, you want to pay or have as low expenses as possible, because a lot of times each department is a revenue center. Okay. So each department sometimes is looked at as its own business. And unfortunately, departments at the same business almost become competitive with each other, right? And they don't want expenses under them if it's not being allocated fairly. So I'm just trying to say some departments, like here at Butler, I can't really think of any departments that compete with each other, but the math department, the business department, the English department, yeah, we're kind of all in different departments, and we kind of like to be treated the same. Or if we see another department is getting to do something and we're not, then we're like, So anyway, just keep that in mind. So here is an example of the single plant-wide overhead rate. You have total budgeted costs overhead for the year. Then you have total budgeted direct labor hours. Now, most of these single rate methods, okay, most of them use either direct labor hours, which we've seen that in job order costing and process costing. So they either use direct labor hours or machine hours. Okay, those are usually two of the biggest cost drivers, especially in manufacturing. Okay, so here's what we've got. It looks to me like we've got these two numbers here, and we're going to come up with a rate. So remember, we've been teaching you predetermined overhead rate. This is kind of like that. So these 20,000 hours actually get split between the snowmobiles department and the riding mowers department. Okay, so they're split 50-50, right? 10,000 hours goes to snowmobiles and 10,000 hours goes to riding mowers. That's where these 20,000 hours are coming from. So if we take the total, which is 1,600,000, and divide it by the 20,000 hours, right? And these are, what does that say? Budgeted. Budgeted direct labor hours is an estimate. Okay, it's an estimate. And it looks to me like a snowmobile and a riding mower both take 10 hours of direct labor, right? Okay, so somebody has figured that out. Okay, I don't know whether it holds true or not. We would find out soon enough, but you're going to take this big number and put it in the numerator and divide by the hours. Okay, so that's what they're doing here. And when they're finished, they get $80 of overhead is going to be applied for every direct labor hour that's worked. Okay, so $80 times 10 direct labor hours, the overhead cost per unit is $800. Now that's an applied amount. That's applied because we started with budgeted. Budgeted means estimated. Okay. Actuals will either come in higher than this, which means we took more time to make it, or it might come in less than this, which means we hurried up the job. What's the problem with hurrying up the job sometimes? Sometimes you get lower quality products, so you don't want to get too tangled up with that. Okay, so anyway, $800 per direct labor hour, and then it took 10 direct labor hours for each unit. So every snowmobile and riding mower is going to have $800 applied to its cost. Remember, that's in addition to the direct materials and the direct labor. Manufacturing overhead is where you put everything else that you can't identify as a direct material or direct labor, okay? So here's how it looks. Here's what a single plant overhead rate looks like. Here's all this overhead, and we want to apply it to each product, okay? So we decided that for every direct labor hour, we were going to apply overhead. It just so happens that these two products take the same amount of time to produce them, okay? So, you know, I don't know if you would necessarily see that all the time, but here is another problem for single plant-wide overhead rate. And so now let's go open our first problem and see if we can't make our way through this. Okay, like I said, I have not done these yet, and that's okay. So first one we're working on is the single plant-wide rate. Okay, so let me put number 1 here. Okay, and let's read it and see if we can't start applying a little of those techniques there. Okay, so it says we're working on a single plant-wide overhead rate. The total manufacturing overhead for this business called Cypress Marine is budgeted for the year. Remember, you have to estimate what your overhead is going to be for the applied amount, okay? So let's put estimated, and I'm going to scooch this over just a little, I think. Yeah, no. There we go, just a little bit. Okay, so let's put, I like to put the word estimate, okay? If they use the word budgeted, that's fine, but my brain uses the word estimated better. Budgeted and estimated mean the same thing. So I'm going to put that up here so you can remember that. Okay, so budgeted equals estimated. Okay, all right, now we've got to come up with the single plant-wide overhead rate, and then we're going to apply it to the units that they're making. So this is a marine company. I assume they make boats because it looks like speed boats and bass boats. All right, so now we're going to put estimated total manufacturing overhead. You can abbreviate if you want. I'm going to put that, so it's 1,026,000. So you're going to get a certain number for yours, and I'm going to turn this into dollars, and I like commas in my numbers because I don't count zeros very well. Looks like I need another 0 at the end. Yeah, I do. Okay, so there you have it. Okay, there is the total overhead for the year. Total estimated, total annual. So you could put the word annual in here so that you know this is for a year. Manufacturing overhead. Okay, now I'll change this to a $sign because I always recommend that in case you are looking at something other than dollars. All right. let's see what they are predicting for and how they're going to apply the overhead. So it says they make two types of boats, speed boats and bass boats. The speed boat and bass boat each require 3 direct labor hours for manufacture, right? Each product is budgeted for 9,500 units of production for the year. Okay, so, okay, let's put 2 columns here, or we'll make 2 areas for the 2 products that they sell. So let's put speed boats here and bass boats. Okay, let's bring bass boats down here. Okay, and they said that each of them require 3 direct labor hours to produce each of these. So we'll put 3 or direct labor hours is 3. Okay, and that's the same for the bass boats. So in other words, both of these boats take the same amount of labor, right? It says determine the total number of budgeted direct labor hours for the year. Okay, now, believe it or not, these hours are also estimated. Okay, budgeted and estimated. So I'm going to put that little trusty word estimated, so you know that's different, right? If it takes 3 hours to make 1 boat, and each product line is going to make an estimate of 9,500 for each category, right? So here is the budgeted units of production. Okay, budgeted units of production. Okay, 9,500. Now I'm not going to put a $sign there, and I'm not going to put a $sign there, because those are not dollars. This is hours and this is units. Okay, so let's put that in. Okay, and now we need to do the same for down here. Budgeted units of production. There we have it. And now we're going to be able to determine how many direct labor hours we're going to need for the year for both of these. Okay, luckily or coincidentally, both boats are identical. Okay, to be honest with you, I don't even know if I'd have separated them, because they take the same amount of time and this and that, but that's okay. But sometimes businesses don't know to do anything different than this. So what we're going to do is take the 3 hours times the 9,500 units, and we'll get our total or budgeted estimated total number of direct labor hours for the year. That's how we're going to get it for each, right? For each. And then we can add them together if they decide that that's what they want us to do. So let's do the math here. Okay, so I'm going to put an equal sign underneath this and this one. Okay, and we should get the same number for both product lines, right? So this, once again, this is going to give you your estimated or budgeted direct labor hours, estimated annual direct labor hours. Okay, so if we take, and I'll just put a little, I like to do the calculation and show it just in case people don't quite know what I'm doing. But I'm going to take 3 times 9,500, and we get 39,500. Okay, that's the total direct labor hours for speed boats. Okay, but I'm going to, all right, so there's the information on the speed boats so far. Why aren't you changing to a comma? Okay, just a second. Let me line this up. Okay, now let me put that in as a number. Okay. So for some reason, my commas weren't wanting to produce. One more time, 3 hours times each unit we expect to produce. Okay, and okay, just want to make sure my math is right. Looks like it's 28,500 hours. Okay, so that's what's going to be here as well. Okay, so if you want to, you can just put that down here. And yep, all right, so there we are. So it looks to me like now, determine the total number of hours of the budget. And I think that is combining the two product lines, okay? Combining the two product lines. So I'm going to put total here. I'll just put it down here. All right, so this is total number of budgeted direct labor hours. So this is one more time, because we didn't have that, did we? All we had was the estimated total annual manufacturing overhead, but we need to know how many direct labor hours this company is using to make these products. So then we can have an estimate to come up with a rate. Okay, so we had to do a little work before we came up with the rate here. So here's where I'm going to put this estimated. Okay, estimated, because I like to keep estimates with each other. And one more time, this is total annual direct labor hours, total annual DL. Okay, we already know manufacturing overhead. Okay, so now we're going to add these hours together. Okay, so they're not dollars, they're hours. So let's add both these together. And there is your estimated total annual direct labor hours. Let me test it. I'm telling you right now that I haven't done these problems, and you may find me not answering them the best right away, but that's okay. All right. So you follow the information your problem has so that you end up with getting some kind of an answer for the two products that you have. Now we want to determine the single plant-wide overhead rate. So this is similar to what we did when we were finding the predetermined overhead rate back in job order costing and process costing, okay? So we need a rate. So I'm going to put that rate up here. Okay, so this is the single plant-wide overhead rate. Plant-wide overhead rate. How do you get a rate? A rate is usually calculated with a division problem, okay? So we're going to take our total dollars and divide by the number of direct labor hours. We're going to get a dollar value, okay? We're going to get a dollar value, yep. What have we just found? So I like to restate what I find, because if I can't explain what I'm finding, then I must not know enough, all right? So what this is saying is, for every direct labor hour, manufacturing overhead of $18 is applied to product costs, right? Unit product costs. Okay, unit product costs. Okay, let's put that $18 here. Now, what is DLH? DLH is $18 per direct labor hour. So they use DLH for direct labor hour. So you need to make sure that you're aware of that. Okay, let's see if we're right. So determine the manufacturing overhead allocated per unit for each product using the single plant-wide overhead rate. So what is the predicted time to make the boats? 3 hours, right? 3 hours, 3 hours. So now we know how much to apply per direct labor hour. So I'm going to scoot this over just a little bit. And I'm going to put to the side here. Okay, we're going to take these 3 hours times $18, right? We'll do the same for here. Okay, and 3 times 18. 3 times 18 is 54. Okay, and that's the amount of overhead that we're going to apply to each unit, and that's in dollars. Okay, that's in dollars. So actually, I'm going to leave that with 2 decimals because that helps us think that they're in dollars better, in my opinion. All right. So because these were identical, does it surprise you that the overhead is being applied the same? It shouldn't. Okay, it shouldn't surprise you. Oh. Make sure something, just making sure something's not wrong in the hallway. Woo. Okay, so I think we're looking at $54 gets applied to every speedboat, and $54 of manufacturing overhead gets applied to bass boats. Let's see if we're right. Okay, so I know this was pretty simple, but you've got to have a strategy, right? And so here is a little bit of a strategy as you go, and you never know what pieces they're going to give you until you go through it. All right, so let's go to number 2. Does anybody have any questions on number 1? Okay, good. Okay, now we're going to work with multiple production department overhead rate. Okay, so let's see what we can do with this. We might have to, let's go look at it in the book for just a second. Right, and once again, this, let me define, because I gave you the definition of the single plant-wide rate up here. I'm going to put in the explanation of this one now. So let me move that down. And then this is going to be the second type of allocation that we're going to learn in this chapter. Okay, once again, it's called multiple production department overhead rates. Okay, so that's what we're going to, now let me go look at, I like the definition real quick. Okay, let's look it up. Okay, this is the single one. Okay, here comes the multiple one. Okay, here's their definition. It uses different rates for each production department to allocate manufacturing overhead costs to products. Okay, in contrast, the single plant-wide rate uses only one rate to allocate all overhead costs. So you're going to find out that sometimes departments don't match up equally with how much overhead they should be carrying. All right, so let's go ahead and put this explanation here. So it uses different rates for each production department to allocate manufacturing overhead costs to products. And just for reference, one more time, we'll learn the difference between this one and the single, right? It says, in contrast, the single uses only one rate. So here you go. Here's a picture of this, right? Here's the one rate thing. And one rate is kind of like one size fits all. I'm sure you guys have seen clothes that says one size fits all. Does it really? No. Usually one size fits all doesn't fit all, right? Well, overhead rates are kind of like that too, because departments can be really different from each other. So we need to make sure that we're being fair with costing, with our costing methods. And if it takes a little more work on the managerial accounting's part to come up with a couple of different rates, then we need to do it. Okay, we need to do it so that costs are more precise. Okay, so, all right. So like I said, I'm just looking. So we're gonna go back. We're gonna get budgeted overhead costs, and it looks like the overhead is gonna be separated into the two departments, right? Because the single rate just took an allocate of the total overhead, but it looks like we're going to have two different manufacturing overhead rates. If we had 4 departments, if we had 10 departments, they might each have their own manufacturing overhead rate too. Okay, so here we go. Let me make some room. Nope, I want those down. Okay. Okay. Oh. All right, let's go back to our problem then. Okay. So total manufacturing overhead for this same company. All right, that's fine. We have Cypress Marine Company. The total manufacturing is $1,115,125. It's divided into 2 departments. So we're going to have a fabrication department, and this is how much overhead goes with that department. And then we have the assembly department, and this is how much overhead goes with that. Now, they've determined that for us because we don't know anything about that. But notice this is not divided up equally, right? And a person might want to see that that plus that truly does equal the total. Okay, so I'm going to start putting in. So we've got total manufacturing overhead, and this is annual, total manufacturing overhead. I like to put annual manufacturing overhead. Okay. And this is an estimate. So you could put budgeted or estimated. It's up to you. Okay, so I'm going to put this number in 1,115,125. Okay, that's the total. So let's change that to dollars. Okay, and then we're going to divide those into 2 departments. I'm going to come down here, and because I don't know if we need a little more room for something that is the total company or not, because I haven't read through this. So the first one is going to be fabrication. Okay, and it's all right, so we'll put its estimated total estimated departmental, that's what I'm going to put, departmental annual manufacturing overhead. Okay, and they gave that to us, 933,625. Okay, we'll fix that here, or I'm just going to fix it right now. We want dollars to be identified as dollars. Okay, now let's move down a little bit and let's put in the assembly department. Okay, and then we're going to put in the same information for assembly, but then change the dollar value. So then we're going to add those 2 together to make sure that they do add up to total overhead, right? 181,500. So we're going to just do a little check figure just in case, because you can't count on everything being correct. You have to prove it. Okay, so that does equal each other. All right, so we've at least checked that out. You don't have to keep it, but you can check it. All right. The Cypress manufactures those two types of boats, speed boats and bass boats. The speed boats require 4 direct labor hours with fabrication and 2 direct labor hours with assembly. Then the bass boats require 3 direct labor hours in fabrication and 1 direct labor hour in assembly. For each of the products, we plan to make 5,500 units of both boats. All right. So let's go ahead and put, okay, so once again, they break it up. So this is the manufacturing total for fabrication. Okay, I'm going to go down here and put in the, okay, just a second. I kind of like to see how the books are doing it because I like to try to model, like if they put it in a table or whatever, I like to try to go with that so that if you see that on a test, that you've seen that before. Okay, so I'm not trying to make this more complicated, but I just, okay, so yeah, they do have. So here's, okay. Okay. Okay, we're going to do this. Okay, we've got the totals. So then we're going to go ahead and put speedboat and bass boat and speedboat and bass boat and put the hours that they have for that department. Okay, so let's put speedboat underneath fabrication. Okay, and move this down just a little bit. And then we'll do assembly. Okay, so then we'll do bass boat. Okay, and then we know how many fabrication hours that they have. And like I said, I'm going to indent these because they fall under the fabrication department. So I'm going to indent just a little bit here. So, you know, they belong under that. And okay, I'll make that a capital, and I'll make assembly all in caps too, because those are the departments. Okay, and then we're going to use speedboat and bass boat under assembly as well. Okay, whoop. Okay, so let's go back to the speedboat. Okay, I think, so it says speedboats require 4 direct labor hours of fabrication and 2 direct labor hours in assembly. Okay, so this is the speedboat. So 4, and then I'm going to leave that 4 by itself because I'm going to put direct labor hours. I'm going to use their abbreviation so that when you see that, you'll understand. Okay, so now speedboat for assembly, right, is 2 direct labor hours. Okay, so DLH. Okay, and then the bass boat is 3 direct labor hours of fabrication and 1 direct labor hour in assembly. What? Now I thought these were supposed to be treated the same. Well, they've dug in a little deeper. Which one's taking longer to make? I think your speedboat is, right? It's got 4 direct labor hours and 2 direct labor hours. The bass boat has 3 direct labor hours and 1 direct labor hours. Yep. So the speedboat must be more labor intensive. Okay, so that's something to observe. Okay, and there are actually people, and they could be in accounting, that actually go out and time how long it takes to do things. Okay, that's oftentimes in the accounting world too. That's a time study. That's a time study. So, all right. So now that we know this, we're going to make the same amount of each boat. So each boat is going to make, we're going to make 5,500 units, 5,500 units, right? So let's go ahead and 5,500 units. So we know how many direct labor hours are going in fabrication. And so I'm going to put 5,500 up here, 5,500 production in units. So this is an estimate too. Okay, and that same number goes here. Oh, that's per boat. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and put that under here. So one more time, 5,500 units of production. Okay, so we'll do 4 times 55. Okay, and that's going to give us direct labor hours for each speedboat that's under fabrication. Okay, so I'm going to move this down. Okay, let me use the 55 hours. So 55 goes for everything, right? Yep. Because we're making 5,500 units. Now remember, the 5,500 units, they're the same units under each department. All right, so let's just keep that in mind. All right, so we've got, let me make an extra line. And now we're just going to use this and put it in for, but okay. And then we're going to have different totals for the direct labor hours. So I'm going to go over here, and this is going to be, okay, because eventually we're going to add fabrication together. So determine the total number of budgeted direct labor hours for the year in each department. Okay, so it looks like these hours, so let me do the math. All right, so 4 times 5,500. Okay, 5,500 is 22,000 hours. Okay, 22,000 hours of fabrication direct labor is going to make 5,500 units of the boat, right? Okay, so once again, this is production. This is not dollars. So let me take my dollar sign out. Okay. All right. So it looks to me like we're needing 22,000 direct labor hours. And this is an estimate. Okay. Estimated direct labor hours. Okay. So now let's figure out the rest of these, right? So it's just a matter of doing the math, and then you're going to add together the information so that we can put in what direct labor hours are for fabrication and what direct labor hours are for assembly, right? So let's see if we can do this here. So we're going to take that same calculation and go 3 times 5,500. Okay, there's 16,500 estimated direct labor hours. Okay, and then back over here. Okay, now we just need to do that for these. All right, so equals 2 times 5,500 to get direct labor hours of assembly for the speedboats, right? Okay. And the same goes for, okay, 1 times, yep, I know that's 5,500, but we want to follow the same pattern. Okay, so we're looking at 5,500 hours. So now we are going to add together okay, so we're going to add these together, right? Because this is under the department, correct? The department is assembly and fabrication, right? We just found how many total hours are predicted on the speedboat under fabrication. And we just found how many hours, and I must have done a wrong number there. Yeah, that's not matching up. There we go. That's better. Okay, so these two numbers get added together. Okay, so let's do that. And we'll get our total direct labor hours for each department. Okay, so let's put an equal sign here and here. We're going to add down. Okay, so together, these equal 6. Nope, it didn't like that. Hang on. You go back up. Okay, it still doesn't like it. Okay, well, I'll add it together. It's because I've got the DLH there. That's okay. So 22,000 plus 16,500 gives us total, and this is an estimate. We're still working with estimates. Estimated total direct labor hours for department. Okay, so let's go do that now. Okay, and we'll use that same description here. Okay, and we'll add 11,000 plus 5,500. And there we have it. So I think we're here now. Okay, determine the total number of budgeted direct labor hours for the year in each department. So this is, once again, this is annual, and we are making two different kinds of boats that use fabrication, right? And also use assembly. Okay, so it looks like it takes longer in fabrication to make these boats than it does assembly. Let's put our direct labor hours in for fabrication, 38,500, and then assembly is 16,500. Let's see if we're right. Okay, hopefully so. Because we need these direct labor hours to now come up with a rate, right? Now we can go back up here that we've got this information and we can calculate the overhead rate here. So this is manufacturing overhead rate, and it's going to be applied per direct labor hour, right? So let's come up with the rate. This rate is going to be the total of the costs divided by the total direct labor hours. Okay, so, and this is, okay, I'm going to put this as, okay, let me bring it down just a second. I want to bring that down, not up here. No. Okay, let's just put it right here next to the word fabrication. Okay, next to the word fabrication. So we're going to take the total in overhead of fabrication, and we're going to divide by the total direct labor hours. We get $24.25, and that should be a dollar value. Okay, right? And I'm going to color that to make sure we remember what we're looking at. Okay, now let's do the same thing for assembly. Same thing for assembly. We're going to take the total dollars in overhead for that department, and we're going to divide by the estimated direct labor hours. So this one is only $11. You say that doesn't seem right. Well, I don't know if it is, but that's what we're calculating to, right? So let's plug this in and see if we're on the right track. So these rates go in as B here. Okay, let's go in as B. Okay, and I think you could understand we're spending a lot more time in fabrication than we are assembly, right? So if you spend a lot more time doing something, there really it should reflect how much overhead is allocated, right? So let's put the amounts in and see if we're close or if we've got to keep working. So I got $24.25 and I got 11. Let's see if we're okay. Yes, we are. Okay, last piece of this, then. The last piece of this is determine the manufacturing overhead per unit for each product using the departmental overhead allocation rate. So if you look at the speedboat, okay, so now I'm going to separate these two. I'm going to put speedboat because now we're not talking departments, we're talking products, okay? Up here, we were talking departments. So I am going to, right? So the speedboat and the bass boat. Okay. Okay, the speedboat takes 4 hours and 2 hours of direct labor. Is that correct? So direct labor hours. Okay, so let's put this in. Direct labor, and these are estimated. This is all estimated. Estimated direct labor hours. Okay, we're going to add those together. So we're going to add 4 hours, because this is the speedboat, plus the 2 hours in assembly. So in total, a speedboat takes 6 direct labor hours, right? That's what I got. Okay, so then if this is the hours and all right, because then it says total manufacturing overhead per speedboat. Okay, the only problem is we've got different rates here, right? So we can't combine them. So forgive me. Okay, so you can do estimated. Okay, so this is going to be estimated direct labor hours for fabrication. So we'll put fab here. Okay, and then we're going to have one for assembly. I'm not going to put the word ass up here. Okay, so I better behave myself. I know most of us are adults. Okay, but I would have found that funny. Okay. All right, instead of fabrication, though, we need to put assembly. So we need both of those hours separated out because they each have different overhead rates, right? So this is going to be 4, and this is going to be 2. Okay. So they're equals 4 and 2 to assemble it. Okay, and then we'll do that for these. So we'll do that for the bass boat too. Some of these problems get a little bit long, and I understand. Okay, so now we want 3 hours for fabrication for the bass boat. Okay, and then we want 1 hour for assembly of the bass boat. And then the last thing we're going to do is take the rate, right? So rate for fabrication is 24.25, right? 24.25, because it's saying, what's the total manufacturing overhead per speedboat? Okay, so speedboat, but we've got to take it times the rate. So we're going to leave the rate up here. What we're going to do is take 4 hours times the rate up here, and we're going to apply overhead for those 4 direct labor hours of fabrication, $97. Okay, For assembly, its rate is $11. So we're going to take 2 times 11 and find out how much overhead is going to come in for speedboats. And now we can add down, okay? We can add down for total manufacturing overhead per speedboat, okay? Total manufacturing overhead per unit, okay? And that's per speedboat. So you add both of those together and I get $119 of total manufacture, $119 of manufacturing overhead for every speedboat. Let me see if I'm even close. I may have missed something, but here we are. Okay, so now let's do that for the bass boat. All right, so we just need that. It's good that we put the rates up above. So this equals 3 times the overhead rate, which is for fabrication. So fabrication must be more complex than assembly, right? So I got 72.75, and then we're going to take 1 hour times this $11 rate, and then we're going to add down both of those. So, and total manufacturing overhead per unit. Okay, so I think we're looking at $119 per speedboat and $83.75 for the bass boat. Okay, you say, golly, well, the speedboat's taking more time, must be more complex, so therefore it should cost us more, and it should qualify for more overhead to be put to that unit. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at. So if you have to find multiple units or multiple rates, then that would be something similar to that. All right, let's keep going. If we don't get through them all, I will finish the video if time runs out. Okay, and I will finish the video and you can finish it up. All right, here comes ABC costing. So we did a single rate, a multiple rate, and now we're going to do an ABC rate. Okay, what is ABC? Activity-based costing. Okay, and I'm going to look it up here in my book so that I can use, if I need to, I can use a table from them. Okay, all right. So total manufacturing overhead for, we're still with Cypress Marine, that's nice, is budgeted for the year at $1,317,050. I'm going to go borrow this. Okay, I'm going to borrow this and bring it down here so I don't have to repeat it. And this is number 3. Okay, so let me put this in, and at least I thought, and it must have let me out. All right, I'm going to make this copy and bring it down here for number 3. Okay, and then one more time, I'm going to borrow this. And I know I've got to change the amount. That's okay. It sets me up. So I have to retype all that. Okay, now I would put down $1,317,050, whatever your problem is showing you. That's the total overhead dollars. Okay, Cypress divides into 4 activities. We've got fabrication, assembly, setup, and inspection. Okay, and this is the amount of overhead that goes with each of those activities. Okay, then they have 2 types of boats still, speed boats and bass boats. Each activity-based usage quantities for each product by each activity are as follows. I don't think I could say that again if I wanted. Okay, so let's see here. We've got fabrication. Here's our boat, or here's our 2 models of boats, right? and look at the activity that's going on. So for fabrication, they use direct labor hours, right? For assembly, they use direct labor hours, but for setups, they don't use hours, they use the number of setups. Just like inspections. For inspections, they use the number of inspections. Okay, so each product is budgeted for 6,500 units of production for the year. So they're going to make 6,500 speedboats and 6,500 bass boats. Determine the activity rates for each activity. Okay, so there's certain rates for each activity. Let me take a look here at what we want. Okay, so activity rates, the budgeted activity costs. Yeah. Okay. Like I said, I just kind of want to line it up. All right. So, okay. I'm going to put these 4 here going down. All right. So just like they show. Okay. So we're going to have to, so we have fabrication. And I'll skip a line, and we have assembly. And we have a setup and inspection. So these are activities that happen at this manufacturer. So here's what we need. Here's the total direct labor hours under fabrication. And we need an amount per direct labor hour. Okay. So if you take, these are the hours. So of 6,500 units, we need the dollar value. So fabrication gets, what is it here? 645,000 in overhead. So this is a dollar value. Okay, this is a dollar value. Let's put those in for the rest of these. So this is what's up here at the top. So it looks like the next one is $270,000. And we want to make sure that is in dollars. 270,000. And then setups get overhead of 219,300. Okay, and we want that in dollars too. And then finally, inspection, it gets 182,750. So you might go find these and put them next to each of the activities that they have described. Okay, that'll help get us where we need to be. Okay, and then so the activity rates, so there's going to be a certain dollar value per direct labor hour. So you're going to divide these totals by the direct labor that's listed for each activity. So I'm going to divide by 4,300 hours. Okay. And you'll need to put those in. Now, these are not dollars, they are hours. So please don't put a dollar sign beside them. Okay. So let's go ahead and put this in 45,000. Okay. And then this one is the number of setups. Well, it still doesn't matter. There's still a total of 645 setups for that activity, and inspections, there's 1,075 of them. Now, the next column will give us our rate. Will give us our rate that we can put in there per direct labor hour. And I know it's almost time to go. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this one. And then I'll do the other two, and it'll be at the end of the video. And I'm sorry this has taken so long, but we got to be careful. Okay. So if you can stick around, I'm going to go ahead and finish this one. Okay, Molly, that's fine. No problem. Glad you could join us. All right. So now I'm going to come up with the rate. Okay, so fabrication rate divided by the total direct labor hours, we're looking at 15. Now we should be able to drag this down and get the rates and move along a little more quickly. Okay, so there it is. There it is. So let's put these amounts in. I've got $15. We'll see you, Carmen. Bye-bye. $6. Okay, the cost per setup is 340 and 170 per setup. Let's see if we're right. Okay, it looks like we are. Okay, now determine the activity-based manufacturing overhead per unit for each product. Okay, so if you guys need to, I'll finish this up. In fact, I might have to think about this a minute. So we're going to do it per unit now. Now that we have a rate. Oh, they're making, oh, this shouldn't be too bad. They're making, how many did they say? 6,500 units, both the speed boats and 6,500 bass boats. Okay. So, okay, but this is how much overhead is. So we really need to take $15 times the hours for fabrication, okay? And then we'll have to divide by the number of units that we're making. So I'm going to take a break, guys. I'll finish this up and you can go back in and finish up these three. I just need a minute to think about it because I want to make sure I guide you the right way. Okay, so I'm going to say goodbye for now. Have a good weekend. And I will have these intro problems ready here shortly. And if you want to finish them up and watch what's going on, and then we'll do, I plan to have chapter 4's coursework ready by Tuesday, the videos, so that we would actually be ahead on the videos. Okay, thanks, Molly. So I think I got everybody, and I see that you're in the chat, Molly, so that's good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the meeting for a minute. Okay, and I'll be right back, but the video will be out there here just a little bit. It'll be on Canvas in the module 4. Okay, the chapter 4 module. So, and I'm going to keep, I need to put who else is in the chat real quick too. So, okay, let's see if anybody else came in. So Oscar was there. I saw his name because I said it. Okay, I got Gora, and let me make sure I have Molly in, because our livestock judging team is in San Antonio, so they have excused absences. Carmen was the only one here in person, which is okay. Doesn't matter to me. I do videos to myself all the time, so it doesn't matter. I just like to know a little better about what I'm doing before I make a video. I just didn't have time to go over a lot of this. So, okay, I think I've got everybody. If you, yeah. Okay, very good. All right, I'm going to end the meeting. And you can check back later.